All right. Hello and welcome everyone. To those of you joining live and to those of you watching the recording, thank you very much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about how to optimize your usage of your Atlassian tools. So that includes core products as well as any add-ons that you might have in your instances. So we're going to kick it off with just some quick introductions. My name is Katie, and I work at Seibert, one of the solution partners in the ecosystem, and I'll be your host today. We have two amazing speakers here joining us, and so I'd like to hand over the virtual mic to Mike Hogan to start off the introductions.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Mike Hogan with Seibert Solutions. I'm based in Montreal. And just a side note, we had 30 centimeters of snow that pummeled us today. For my American folks, that's 12 inches of snow. So after this webinar, I'm going to be rushing off and start shoveling the driveway for the next hour or two. But thanks for being here again. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Pass it over to Mahima.
Hi everyone, so I'm Mahima and I work at miniOrange as Senior Business Analyst. So I'm based in India and right now it's 12:30 a.m. So probably I'll be sleeping after the webinar as soon as I get over with this. But I'm very excited to talk about Atlassian stuff and help you all to save license cost.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you both for that introduction. So, as Mahima alluded to, we're going to definitely talk about how to avoid over licensing and hopefully save costs for your Atlassian suite, and also how to make sure that you're not duplicating any functionality within various tools that you have. It's easy for things to kind of get overlooked, especially if people installed it quite a while ago. And then also, we're going to take a look at ways that you can use Atlassian across your entire organization, and some ways that you can maybe think about consolidating your teamwork over the Atlassian platform so that you don't have this immense tool sprawl. So that leads me to this first section here, which, a lot of times at Seibert, we talk about energizing work life as, the ideal, right, for how teams perform and do their best work together. And we believe that there's three areas that really need to be strong and balanced in order to achieve that energizing work life. And that's people, organization, and technology. And so today we're going to be focusing on the technology portion, which is right here, specifically with Atlassian tools. And in this, we're going to be talking about how you can really use these tools to their best extent to enable and accelerate your teams. So to dive right into it, we hear a lot of buzzwords in the tech industry. There's tool sprawl, there's shadow IT, tech stack, over licensing, IT optimization, and I'm wondering from the panelists here to kick off this first set of questions, which of these are really keeping business leaders up at night? Which buzzwords, which concerns are really the biggest problems plaguing business leaders today?
Yeah, okay, I think it's a great question to lead off with. And admittedly, before I started my career in the Atlassian ecosystem in 2018, I wasn't too familiar with these buzzwords like tool sprawl or technical debt, shadow IT. And I think it's really pertinent to the Atlassian ecosystem because of two things. First, the Atlassian product stack scaling up as much as it's had in the last 5 years. I mean, products are getting more and more popular all the time, and so organizations are scaling up and investing in more of the Atlassian stack for their business needs. And as they do that, there are some challenges if it's not done appropriately and if it's not scaled properly. Second, of course, is the big demand in the last 5 years for the cloud product. Atlassian's invested millions of dollars in the cloud set of products, and along with Atlassian announcing the sunsetting of the server base of products, this made a huge demand over to the cloud set of products, and that transition from the on-prem version to the cloud version has opened up a lot of gaps. And I've spoken to hundreds of different customers over the years about these challenges, for tool sprawl, for example, increasing the license costs and the inefficiencies that it creates when they identify that there's so many different tools that sometimes they don't even know what these things are doing and how they're providing value. And often when that happens, that they're actually doing the opposite and not bringing any value, right? And of course, with the challenge of struggling and collaborating across different multiple platforms and even teams at that as well. The technical debt also, this grows as legacy configurations and automations and all these custom scripts often remain undocumented and optimized as well. And this is really, often just not kind of putting in the groundwork that maybe should have been put in the initial stages of the tooling of the implementation. And you get into the later stages of the gaming and of the game, and you try and look back on maybe required documentation or information that you might need. It's not there. And this is where these kind of gaps of technical debt are often identified as well. And this adds to more challenges of kind of future changes or growth on the product stack as well. Of course, shadow IT, another popular buzzword that we've been hearing in the last few years. This poses a security risk when teams are using unauthorized tools, and sometimes it's tough for those security teams to authorize tools if they don't even know that they exist. And some of the security teams, might not necessarily have the tools or not familiar with the tooling to identify, what is actually included in the tech stack that they're dealing with. And of course, when this happens, they're losing control over their data governance, the integrations, and whatever compliance that they might have in place as well. And,
yeah, I can tell you.
Yeah, please.
Just to cut in there, I can tell you from, working in marketing, sometimes we might be like, oh yeah, we really need this one tool. Like, let's try out Asana, and then as someone else in the organization, like, wait, we don't need that. Why are you doing that? So it's really
I would
important to.
definitely agree on that part. Like sometimes there are tools that are already in the organization and we don't know about it as a different team. Like some other team might have purchased it, and when we go to IT team, like we need to purchase the tool. Then we get to know, oh, this tool is already in place in the organization. We could have make use of it, right? And then if we don't go to IT team, then if we purchase it directly, then it's like waste of money and like purchasing it again.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think part of that challenge comes from just a lack of visibility, right? Like if you have your central IT team, they might have a better idea of what's going on, but even sometimes there's a disconnect there, right? Do you find that there's any other challenges that come up when teams are trying to keep track of all of these different software? And are there any solutions that you have come up with that you think address those challenges?
I think one of the best ways would be to centralize the system, so that everybody knows what everyone is using, and if we want to use something which other team is using, we can make use of that through the IT team, so that we know that this tool is already in place and we can make use of it. So probably I think if we centralize the process, we will be able to utilize the resources properly. and
Yeah,
some,
and
and I also think that one of the major problem is technical debt. So basically when we try to fulfill short term demands, we go into making something which is not structured, like customized codes, and maybe we just store it with ourselves and we share with customer directly, and this leads to the problem. So maybe for that we can also think about long term goals. It's like a financial debt, right? So you take EMIs for maybe buying a home, and you take it for short, like your short goal is completed with that, but when it comes to looking into the long term goal, you have to pay the EMIs every month to fulfill it. So it's more like that.
absolutely. And I think we've been talking more broadly so far in the conversation, right, about all these different tools that maybe are in Atlassian, outside of Atlassian, but I want to narrow it down a little bit since we are part of the Atlassian ecosystem, and that's our bread and butter today. So, when it comes to specifically Atlassian user management, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see organizations falling victim
Yeah, there's definitely a
to?
few ones, a few of them. What's really interesting, as I mentioned before, especially we've been heavily engaged in these kind of technical migrations over the years, and first, kind of doing that initial assessment of your current state of your architecture or of your solution design. And during these initial assessments, some of the basic information that's brought up, of course, is your user count and the active users, inactive users, the different applications that you have, and making kind of a formal report and presenting that to the customer. And it's interesting sometimes the reactions that you have these customers sometimes when they just have the information that they have access to, and they review it and they're like, wow, we didn't really understand. Half of our users are inactive on our Jira instance, for example, right?
Mm,
The add-ons, and of course this is also a benefit of working with an Atlassian partner, or at least some sort of expertise in the Atlassian ecosystem, especially when it comes to add-ons, because especially at the larger organizations, and it does happen in smaller organizations as well, a little less, is that there's a lot of different products. I think there's like 2,000 different products on the Atlassian marketplace or something, and a lot of them, of course, they fit into different categories like scripting or time tracking or diagrams or whatever. And over the years, you'll have folks that will purchase these add-ons, and because, of course, this procurement isn't decentralized, or there's no kind of approval process, there's no governance on these apps, or they weren't in the early stages at least, and they'll purchase an app specifically for their team, and it'll be maybe a test management app, and then maybe a year or two later another team buys a similar test management app, right? And then when we do these assessments, all of a sudden we present to the customers, we're like, all right, well, you have 4 different test management apps, and you could save thousands of dollars just by kind of consolidating this into one. And they're like, "What? Hold on a second. You mean these things do the same thing?" And we're like, "Yeah, they're the same thing, different names. Maybe there's a little fine-tuning tweaks or something like that are the difference between these apps." And this is actually a more common problem than you actually think. And similarly to the users, and what's interesting about the users as well, is the difference between Confluence and Jira. So you have your active users on Jira. And often I see this very, very often, is that you'll have an organization, maybe 3,000 employee organization, and then they're like, all right, well, we're 3,000 employees, let's get 3,000 users. And actually, often what happens is that there's only maybe 500 users that are actually needed in their Jira stack. And similarly, in Confluence as well, what happens is that folks are thinking, well, we're 3,000 employees, so we need to buy 3,000 Confluence user licenses as well. And so they make thousands of dollars of purchases for these licenses. And the big thing about Confluence is the difference in licensing is that to access a lot of the content in Confluence, you don't necessarily have to have a license. Right. And so you can configure the access to the content, whether it's going to be public or private, if you need permission based and stuff like that. And in some cases, you'd only need a micro, a small amount of these users to actually keep that Confluence instance up and running as a tried and tested wiki. But it's definitely some of the things that I've been seeing in the last little while. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm hearing themes of you of like, there's a lack of awareness. Maybe no one in particular is at fault for that, but there's, maybe the decentralized systems. Maybe there's not enough time, right, to do a full in-depth audit or assessment of what's going on. And then maybe there's a little bit of a lack of context or intentionality when you purchase the product of how you're going to use it and which teams and which people actually need access. Mahima, I'd be curious to hear from your perspective too. What other pitfalls do you see when it comes to Atlassian user management?
So I think mainly like there are a lot of inactive users that are sitting there, and uh, admins really don't know about it. And as Mike mentioned, that we are spending a lot of money on that for Atlassian license, and then for all the apps that we have installed, maybe 40, 50 apps, and the user tier that we're using is 3,000, but actual users are, let's say, 500 only. The rest of them are actually not using the product. So we are paying a lot to unnecessarily to Atlassian. So I think it's necessary to clean up the inactive users frequently in order to save cost here. So uh, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I hear what you're saying. And, maybe it's a all of these factors coming together, right? Like um, the process is maybe there. Maybe we don't have the right number of users. Maybe we don't have the time from an admin perspective, or maybe there's something else that we're missing. The centralized system, for example, to keep track of everything. So we've established that there's a challenge here, right? That we're not perfect, we're human, right? Sometimes we get the numbers wrong and we're accidentally paying more than we should be. So let's dive into that and dive into the solution, right? So, how do we actually make that number of licenses fit what we actually need? So, I'm going to toss out this next question. How can we determine, or how can an organization determine whether current license count aligns with actual usage?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And there's different approaches to a solution, of course, to many of these problems. I think it's fair to say up front that it's important to consider what kind of deployment you're on. So if you're on data center or on-prem stack of products versus cloud. And some are easier than others to work with, and there's different solutions. And of course, another option is to bring in an expert to do this kind of for you. But some of the low-hanging fruit, of course, is to schedule those audits, right? Do those internal audits, and there's different cadences depending on the different kind of instance sizes that you folks have, and maybe you have to take compliance into consideration, whatever security protocols you guys might have. And so some of these are actually mandated in some of that framework already. But for folks that are just kind of going on a whim sometimes and growing and scaling, it's something to consider as you start growing in user counts or agent counts in the case of Jira Service Management. So using tools and I think right here you could see some recommended kind of audit schedules anyhow for the small SMBs, 1 to 100 users. Maybe consider something biannually. The medium, mid-sized, mid-market companies, you might want to consider quarterly audits, and of course more larger enterprise level customers, you might want to consider monthly, especially if there's a lot of changeover. A lot of turnover as well on the user side. You want to make sure that that process is well defined and audited on a regular basis. So that's kind of the best practice anyhow, is to put that groundwork on the process level of the business. And then what tools do you use? Now, there are tools on cloud, for example. So the Atlassian Admin Insights, which is a little different than the approach that would be taken for the on-prem version, but there are the access logs that are able to track, active and inactive users, which is great. It's really handy, and you could even schedule these in some cases where you could schedule it on a monthly, quarterly, or biannual basis. And there are some other tools too that kind of talk, if I'm kind of talking out of the box here, especially for the enterprise level folks, there are some things to consider for enterprise licensing. So we're using Enterprise Insights, and enterprise licensing also offers a unique ability where if you have multi instances and one of these instances, might have 20 users versus your parent instance might have 1,000 users, and that 20 user instance needs a time tracking add-on. All right. Instead of having to pay for 1,020 users, you'd only have to pay for those 20 users on that 20 user instance, right? So leveraging some of the tools that and abilities and or features that Atlassian offers out of the box is always something to consider as well. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the low hanging fruit, just kind of internally scheduling those audits, making sure the permissions are configured appropriately, having the procedure, the onboarding, offboarding procedures with your HR and IT folks down solid and down packed. And there's actually a great solution for that, by the way, with Jira Service Management to automate all of that as well. But maybe Mahima, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, definitely. So I think small steps like frequently auditing can lead to a very big impact. It can align your licenses, your users. It can clean up your instances. Um, but the question is, how would you do it? So I think one of the useful ways can be to do it manually, but the other way can be to automate the process so that you don't have the burden of worrying about it again and again, like maybe like in every few months or weeks that you have to run the audit, you have to see whether how many licenses are getting used. So for such problem, we have a solution which is called automated user management. So basically, this is an app developed by miniOrange, and it can enhance you to increase your efficiency and reduce errors in Atlassian user management. So I would just like to go the key features of user management app. So basically, the problem that we talked about right now, just let me do it. Yes. So the problem that we talked about just now, that there are a lot of inactive users sitting in your instances, and it is also making you pay heavily, as well as it leads to security risk, because they are sitting there inactive. So if someone tries to use their credentials or use their account to maybe indulge in some kind of activities which can lead to data breaches, so it will be very risky. So for that, it is very important to clean up the users. So one way is automate user and group management. So basically, with this app, you can automatically delete or deactivate users based on their last login time. So let's say if you want to deactivate users who have not logged in since last 90 days, so then why to keep them and why to give them the licenses? You can just use this feature and remove those. The other thing is license optimization. So you can remove inactive users from the license group. So as we all know that we have license group in cloud for Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, etc. So you can remove those inactive users from license group as well for all the different applications, saving license cost for all the different apps like Jira, Confluence. Then we have CSV actions. So with help of CSV actions, you can import or export data easily in Jira or from Jira in bulk. Then we have automated email notifications. So basically, you are going to deactivate a lot of users who have not used Jira, but then sometimes there might be people who were lazy to open the Jira, but they actually need the access to Jira. So we notify the users before deactivating, so that they know that their account is going to be deactivated in the next 7 days, or let's say next 15 days. So if they want their license to be there, they can just go and log it. Then we have user deactivation. So you can easily perform bulk operations and remove inactive users, or even in a data center we have a feature where if a deactivated user logs in, so they get the license automatically on login. So it's such a great feature. You are able to save the license cost. You are removing them from the license, but the next time they log in, they get the license. So basically they don't know what is going on in the background, but you are saving a lot because of that. Then you can also filter user based on their activity status, groups, last login time. Then you can also suspend or remove long invited users easily. So one of the example for this is, let's say we hire a lot of people, so we give them access to Jira. We make the licenses, but let's say some of the people don't join the organization itself, so we send them the invite but they did not join. So we can also remove such users who have never logged in, or who have you know are lying there with a long term invitation date. So we can remove such users very easily. So I think this app helps you automate user management without doing any code. You just have to, there are toggles, you just have to on it, off it, and just put like number of days, and how many days do you want to notify the users, and what was the last login days that you want. So it's very easy to use, like anybody can use. So the major benefits of the app are, you can optimize license, you can reduce manual errors. If you're going to do it one by one by selecting the user, it's going to take a lot of time. So it um, enhances cost, simplifies the actions, and it does a no code automation, as I mentioned. So if you have any doubts, or if you want to use this app, you can just go to marketplace and search for the app automated user management for Jira by miniOrange, and you'll be able to do it. And in case you have any doubts there, you can definitely reach out to me. So yeah, that was about the app. If you don't want to do it manually, then definitely you can just use this app.
Yeah, and I like that we're, giving several different options, right? For maybe larger teams that have a dedicated Jira or Atlassian admin, the manual checking and governance might be a little bit easier, or might have more time for that, right? Maybe for other types of organizations, it would be useful to add an app to their instances and help that automate the entire process. I want to move and shift gears now and talk more about apps specifically, because it's a big hot button topic, you could say, right? It's one of the big blockers for cloud migrations oftentimes. And so, we talked about, okay, you could have diagramming apps, you could have time tracking apps, you could have maybe uh, 2 or 3 different scripting apps. So, how do we go about identifying which of those add-ons actually do have overlapping functionality, and determine which one to keep and which one to let go
Mm.
of?
Yeah, it's a great question, Katie, and I'll add kind of 3 points to that. But first, I'll preface it by saying what I'm seeing more and more, especially on the apps, and what's really been interesting on the cloud side of the product, of the core products anyhow, is that folks that are either currently using cloud products and have add-ons, or even if they're using the on-prem version and then considering cloud, what we're seeing more and more is that the cloud core products are having significant investment in feature development, where a lot of the features that are being rolled out could actually achieve the desired features and functionality of these add-ons. And if you're not kind of up to date with the features, the rollout of these new features and stuff, you could actually be paying for an app that you don't necessarily need to be paying for, because it could be achieved out of the box, especially on the cloud side of the product.
Right. I think Atlassian has put a lot of functionalities inbuilt itself. So maybe you were using the app on data center, but probably you don't need it for cloud. But you have to know that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's a great point. You have to know that. And that was one of the points I was kind of bring up. So how do you identify this? Is so first, you have to assume that someone on your team is staying up to date with the kind of feature rollout, have their ear to the ground, as they say, with the feature development and the rollout and all the new releases that have been coming out over the years. And then maybe as we were talking about scheduling these kind of user audits, maybe you could do kind of more add-on or feature audits as well, and really identifying these key features that the teams use and really kind of match it up and map it to what's available out of the core products, and also if they're available with the add-ons that are being used as well, right? But that is assuming that you do have that kind of expert that is able to identify what these apps do, because these large organizations where you might have literally hundreds of different apps sometimes, or even dozens of apps, you take a look at them and it's really difficult to have any idea of what any of them do, right? And that's where
probably we just know about the main functionality of the app, but we don't know about the side functionalities that it offers, and maybe that is overlapping with some other app. We bought the app for, let's say, for a single functionality, but it has a lot of other functionalities. So feature comparison, like knowing your app, like what exactly it does in detail, is very important. I think that is a great point, Mike.
And to kind of resolve this, in my opinion anyhow, is you have to get your teams involved, right? And I don't recommend kind of having one person come in as a gunslinger and taking out apps here and there, and like that app's gone. I think you need to have team collaboration and really identify the purpose of the tools, the desired features, what are the desired results out of these, and then match it up to what other teams are potentially doing and what's available on that, right? And so it's an exercise that needs to be done maybe routinely or however you see fit as an organization. And this could be led, of course, internally by one of your experts, and it could be an exercise to get that person or people, that team, up to speed on the tech stack that you folks have. Alternatively, as well as bringing in an expert, right, and bringing in a partner. I know here at Seibert, we offer our app assessments for all of our customers at no charge at the beginning of our engagement with them, and to give them that information to let them know, how they're currently using their tools and any consolidation opportunities. So it is an option to consider, as well as to bring in experts, right? But either way, getting that team collaboration, get those teams engaged is probably the best practice on how to tackle that problem. So.
And do you find that there's any sort of metric or North Star piece of data maybe that you've used to evaluate the usage overall, right? Like, is there a way to get that information and then make a data-driven decision about which app to keep?
Yeah, there's different methods depending on, and some of this has to be on the deployment method of your tool set, of course, is if you're on-prem or data center or in cloud. There's different tools that you consider for both, right? And we could definitely dive into that, and we actually use some of those tools internally over here as well. But getting teams involved, and a good way of doing with the teams is instead of kind of maybe scheduling these hour-long meetings and hashing out through it and kind of being a burden on these teams and like, oh, it's the IT guys again. Great, can't wait to meet with these guys. But maybe doing something alternatively, like sending out surveys to understand, whether these specific apps are providing the real business value that was intended to be used, right? And there's, as I mentioned, there's tools that on both cloud and data center that can be considered to complement these type of activities too. So
I think I would suggest whenever someone is buying any app, they should take the trial of the app and do a good trial, just not like just test the functionality in 1-2 days and like we're getting the work done, so let's just purchase it. I think every organization should do a good trial of the app, and maybe they should maintain some of the documents in maybe Confluence, that what app does, what are the features of the app, so that whenever anyone is looking into all the apps that specific organization is using, so they can just go over that data in the conference or anywhere else, that these are the apps, these are the apps that fall under the same category, and these are the features that this app performs. This is the second category, and these are the various apps that fall under this category. So it will definitely make the work easier, and help to not dedupe the applications, like.
Yeah.
So that would be one of the method. And then, as you mentioned, like getting out the surveys from the users, whether the purpose is being fulfilled or not, and what apps are the users using. So let's say I might have given access to different apps to different teams, but maybe let's say marketing team or a specific team is just using Jira, they don't need Confluence, but I have given them the license for that as well. So by survey we will be able to know that this specific department or this specific team uses more of this application, then maybe we can just remove the access of other applications after being discussed. So that is one of the thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree, Mahima. And going back to your first point too, I mean, I believe transparency sometimes is important as well. Like if there's a team that's initiating a trial of a specific product, it might be of value to actually kind of broadcast that to other teams as well. Hey, by the way, we're trying, ABC tool over here. In
Right.
case you guys wanted to try it as well, let us know. We can add you in the permission scheme or whatever. And it also give other teams an opportunity to say, oh, hey, by the way, we're actually using a tool just like that, and so maybe considering some sort of, communication method or some level of transparency, often Slack channels or team channels or whatever we're using for instant messaging these days is a good method as well. So,
Yeah. Absolutely, and it just makes me think how important it is not only to have your tools in order and maintained, right, but also to have that open communication across your teams and how that plays such a big role in saving costs and working more efficiently together. So it really all does one does tie into the other. Um, so moving on a little bit more now, we've talked about ways to optimize your core Atlassian product licenses, right? We've talked about ways to look at your apps and to see maybe there's some duplicate functionality there and really honing in on what is actually bringing value to your teams. I think one of the maybe misconceptions or myths that's out there, right, about Atlassian is that it's just Jira, right? It's just a tool for software development. It's really just engineers that use this tool. And I'd like to say in recent years that narrative is shifting, right? Outside of the dev and engineering worlds, and more teams across the business are starting to use Jira and Confluence and JSM too to enhance their workflows. So I want to kind of open up the conversation in that direction. And I want to start off with just, why do you think we're seeing this shift towards business teams of all different shapes and sizes, marketing, facilities, HR, et cetera, beginning to adopt the Atlassian suite?
yeah, I think that's a great question as well. And I think Atlassian's identified an opportunity to grow revenue and grow the product set and bring value to the customers. And I can speak for myself that over the years, I started the Atlassian ecosystem in 2018, and I've seen Jira in particularly used in so many different ways. And it's either been, finely tuned to uh, a very valuable solution that's brought a lot of value and done amazing things. And I've also seen kind of it mutilated and and not bring a lot of value. I've seen it turned into a CRM, for example, where it's definitely not intended to be a CRM. However, over the years, what we've seen, especially in the Atlassian marketplace, is that there's been these add-ons and other products that have been created to enhance the features and functionality of the core products. And a lot of these products have brought a lot of value, and they've done very well commercially. And I think it's also perked the ears up of Atlassian, saying, hey, listen, if a lot of these add-ons are bringing value by bringing in CRM functionality, for example, maybe we should start looking at other solutions. And it also makes sense as well. A lot of organizations are already invested in Atlassian stacks, right? The Atlassian stack of products. So along with Jira, often, not always, but it's handcuffed with Confluence. And now we're starting to see Jira Service Management being tied in with ITSM. So being able to be kind of a holistic solution rather than just kind of being standalone products is definitely seems to be the strategic approach for Atlassian, and a lot of organizations are starting to embrace it, and we're starting to see now out of the box are templated solutions like HR out of Jira Service Management and Jira and Confluence, for example. And instead of paying a gazillion dollars for Oracle HCM or a Workday or something like that, why don't we consolidate everything in tools that we've already invested in and that we're using every day? Finance as well, legal, other teams, and we're starting to see a lot of investment not only on the Atlassian side, but also on the customer side to use and execute these solutions. It's been very interesting in the last few years, that's for sure.
Yeah. Also adding here that mostly all the organizations have Jira or maybe Confluence for some of the other use. So when you already have an application for using it, so then you can definitely make use of it to to your extend it to your maybe HR team and legal team, finance team. Uh, it will result in cost efficiency for your organization, saving cost. You can say you can use the same app for various things. You won't need to buy another app for doing the same thing. Let's say CRM. I've seen a lot of people now using Jira as a CRM, so you don't need to go and buy some other CRM if you can already use this app to do your work, and so on and so forth. Like for finance, there are various financing apps that are in place, but when you have Jira, you can do everything. Plus also, I think one thing that makes it easy to work with is uh, the ease of access of Jira. The tool is very easy to use, so even non-technical people are able to use it very easily. It's just like drag and drop, or the buttons are there in place. You just go through it and you are able to understand it by yourself. Like you don't need someone to teach you how to maybe create tickets or how to track your campaigns. It's very easy, very easy. So I think that's what makes Jira a unique solution and a multi-purpose app, you can say, for all the teams.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't recommend using Jira as a CRM. I'm not endorsing that. I've definitely seen it happen a few times. There's definitely better tools, but it can be used as a CRM, that's for sure. But I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best tool.
And I can also see, in addition to the cost savings, right? Also time saving. If you're only working within Atlassian and you have all of your tools on one platform, it's easy to toggle between all of them. Even if you're going from, let's say, Trello to Jira Service Management, that still might be easier than opening a whole new window to get into, I don't know, Asana or Monday.com or something like that. Um, so I see the vision, right? I see there's a lot of opportunity out there, and I think we've already touched on some of the ways that business teams or non-technical teams can use Jira and JSM. But were there any other interesting examples that you maybe wanted to call out within that?
Yeah, what's interesting, what I've seen, and what we've been working with recently, actually at Seibert, we've started implementing HR onboarding, offboarding process, and even recruitment process using Jira Service Management and Jira, and of course the wiki that comes along with it via Confluence. And it's actually available. There's a solution available out of the box in Jira and Jira Service Management for onboarding, offboarding, recruitment. And this also assumes that your organization wants to adhere to kind of more the agile kind of Kanban method than some of the other traditional methods that are used in kind of HR practices. So HR recruitment definitely is one. It's getting a lot of traction, in my opinion, what I've been seeing recently. Marketing, I don't know what you, Katie, you're the marketing expert here, and I could definitely see a lot of value using Kanban boards for marketing campaigns. Labeling those swim lanes and moving all the different marketing activities accordingly as the campaigns progress. And then being able to identify any of those blockers and any things that are lagging behind, and being able to stay on top of it. And
Yeah.
of
Well,
course,
I would be like going against my job description if I didn't use Jira, right? In my to track my marketing, which we do, but also in other organizations that I've worked for, we've had some sort of like Kanban board type tracking. It makes sense from a marketing perspective, and it helps you have a high level overview too of like what's in progress, what are all our ideas, how much do we have in production right now. So from that perspective, yeah, it's very seamless.
So we also personally use Jira for campaign trackings, for customer pipeline, then for client requirements, and so on and so forth. Basically, Jira is something that can be used for anything.
Yeah, in some we're big Jira fans. Um, so for teams that maybe are only using Jira for software development, let's just say hypothetically, right? How would you go about evaluating if another team, within their business is a good fit for using an Atlassian tool? Or maybe if there's some other tool that would fit their uses better?
yeah, and often, you have to identify the type of team it is. So sometimes, and we'll talk about why they might not be able to use Jira, and sometimes there's some sort of compliance or security requirement that gets in the way of how the process is handled internally, and put some roadblocks up for Jira. And those, we don't run into them very often, but they do happen, right? However, to better understand if Atlassian has a tool specific for a team is to really understand first how the team is working, right? And a good way of doing is, the process map exercise is developing that process map, understanding the different processes that are involved, any gateways, maybe a decision tree or something like that. And from there, working with the team, which I think is a key component, is working along with the team, is being able to identify the optimized way of working, right? How do they want to end up exercising this process that has been developed over time? And typically, in a lot of cases, depending on the complexity, of course, but I haven't seen too many complex use cases that can't be resolved by Jira. But typically, these solutions can be built in Jira, or sometimes even just using the workflows and functionality out of the box.
So I think
Often I find and just one last note, I apologize. What I find from these projects is typically, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily the complexity of these workflows or the processes that they have that can't be resolved. It's usually a little bit more on the resistance of the team. So that's why I also mentioned is like get the team involved at the very beginning. Because if you start throwing in new tools, new processes, and new ways of doing things to a team without them having any kind of say, you often get a lot of resistance from my experience anyhow. And to reduce that, the chances of that, make sure you get those folks involved early. So.
Yeah, I think the main key would here be like what are the requirement of the team. It totally depends on that, and how tech savvy, or how or what kind of tool is required by the team, whether it is just Jira, Conference, or JSM. So it all depends on the needs. So that is there. And also I think Atlassian makes it very easy to work with, because it can be easily integrated with any of the external tools. Like even on the marketplace, we see a lot of apps which help us to integrate with a third party app which is not of Atlassian, like let's say monday.com or some other app like Slack, Microsoft Teams, and everything. So that also makes it very easy to work. So the data can be synced from one app to the other app. So I guess so. It all depends on the team and the kind of you know the adaptation that they want. Like if they want a lightweight tool, so maybe Jira standard, or Trello is also good for that matter. So yeah, it all depends.
Yeah. And of course, we have one more thing, ways that to kind of consider the external tools or other kind of third-party tools that are being used as well. And sometimes integrations are a little bit easier with some tools than others, and data sources and whatnot. And also ties in with kind of the security compliance I was talking about. But those things got to be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other final thoughts about this topic, or maybe pieces, nuggets of information that you'd like to share with the audience about, saving costs in Atlassian or optimizing your use of the Atlassian suite?
So I personally think that it is very important to be aware of the apps that your organization is using, their features, regular audits. Those are very, very small steps, but it can actually lead to a very big impact and good productivity, better cost saving, and like less risk when inactive users are not there. So you are at a better place when they are sitting there, so anything can happen with that data. So basically I think very small steps are there to get started with, but it can actually help you a lot and your organization definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, to add to that, and yeah, thanks, Mahima. I definitely agree. And so just some of the themes that we've been talking about is first, get these audits in place for user activity, and maybe develop a different audit specifically for add-ons. So you want to develop that internal process, either with your teams internally, or even in the procurement, on the procurement side, even the IT side. Get the teams involved. As I mentioned, and there's kind of a common theme that we're talking about today as well, is kind of communication, the transparency. There's definitely usefulness in that. I don't see it's a lot of harm. Sometimes there's whatever kind of privacy or other mysterious reasons why we can't talk about apps or evaluations for some reasons. I don't know why. But try and get the appropriate people involved in these app evaluations and purchases, of course. And one thing I'll also add too is use the tools and services that you might have available to you, right? And as I mentioned, there are some tools in the Atlassian tech stack that are available for you to help assist these audits, either the audit logs or the some other practices that you have available to you. And when all else fails, you can call in an expert, and we might know someone that might be able to help you folks out. So
When all else fails, phone a friend, right? And ask the Atlassian community too.
absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and joining us for this webinar. And if anybody in the audience has a question, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions that we might not have covered today. But otherwise, thank you for being here. Mike, Mahima, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I hope that this helped, work through some challenges for those listening. And yeah, thank you so much, and good luck with your Atlassian tools.
Right.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
everyone.
much, Mike and Katie. It was great
Thank you,
talking
Mahima.
to you guys.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.